The war in Ukraine really changed the mindset because till that point we were dealing with GPS-free navigation, GPS-free landing, and for the commercial side, it was one of the boxes that they need to check in order to say, okay, we have enough redundancy. But for critical missions like the ones that you saw in Ukraine, it's a necessity, meaning without such a technology, the drone is useless.
Welcome to the autonomous age, where drones map our cities, robots save lives, and underwater vehicles scan the ocean floor. I'm Shay Senior, and this podcast is your front row seat to the real stories behind the machines shaping our future and the people behind them, from the engineers and researchers to the entrepreneurs and investors. So, episode number 7, and I'm happy to be here. We're back in the studio in Israel, and today I'm happy to host Roy Shmuel from Sightec. You will start sharing with us your whole story, but I feel it's an exciting one in the new studio, and I'm happy to have you here.
Hey Shai, pleasure to be here, and congrats for the new studio. Looks great.
Thanks. So tell us a little bit, how did you get to the world of drones? How did you get to the category of visual and understanding that it would be something so necessary in the field?
So actually, Sightec started back in 2017, where I met a group of researchers that came out of Ben-Gurion University here in Israel. And the research work was in the area of computer vision and AI. And when I saw the different concepts that they presented back then, that were very innovative, we thought that this type of technology can really transform the emerging market back then of drones and unmanned aerial systems. Back in 2017, if you remember, there was a lot of hype around this market and what can be enabled. But it was clear that there is a major issue around scalability and the economics of this market. We embarked on a journey of developing visual autonomy for those vehicles to enable critical missions in an efficient way. This is how we started Sightec. And this is what we're still doing after 8.5 years.
So I believe in 2017, your focus was on the commercial market.
Right. Back in 2017, the big promise was around things like drone delivery and the commercial applications that were emerging during this period of time. Amazon, a few years back, was launching their drone project, and others followed. And we wanted, at the beginning, we were mainly focused on enabling higher degree of safety for the mission. We were focused on enabling missions beyond visual line of sight. Because in this type of operations, I'm talking about commercial operations, it's all about safety and the efficiency of the mission. And as you know, as a drone pilot, it takes lots of logistics and people in order to operate something like drone delivery operations, let's say, in the US. And we realized that you have to make it more automated and at the end autonomous. And we need to find the right sensors that will enable this higher level of autonomy. And we believed back then, and we still believe, that the mono-camera approach, visual autonomy, this is the way to go in terms of scalability and efficiency.
So we're speaking about navigation, if I understand it right. Of course, from my perspective as a drone pilot, so I completely agree with you that I want to focus on the mission and less on the stabilization of the platform. That's where I would like to feel comfortable, and then my brain is used for the right operation. But we're talking about the operation side of it, and in commercial, it really connects to what we talked about in episode 1 with Ori Gonen, that on the commercial side, regulation, safety will always lead.
Right.
And on the defense side, it's less harsh, but the potential of mistakes is higher, the risk is higher. And I understand that at some point you've realized that you also have something to offer to the defense industry, which is
Right. I would say you're completely right, and I think that from the very beginning we were dual use. So the concept was to enable autonomy level for the vehicle itself, and then you're agnostic to the mission, whether you're going to conduct a critical mission like homeland security, or you're conducting a logistic operation. It doesn't matter, because at the end, the drone itself and the overall operation needs to be more automated and at the end more autonomous. So we were kind of agnostic to the mission itself. Having said that, we have been dealing through the years with all types of autonomy functions, including navigation, landing, obstacle avoidance. We were also touching the autonomous mission itself sometimes. And I think that for the industry as a whole, and for us as Sightec as well, the war in Ukraine really changed the mindset, because till that point we were dealing with a GPS-free navigation, GPS-free landing, and for the commercial side, it was one of the boxes that they need to check in order to say, okay, we have enough redundancy. But for critical missions like the ones that you saw in Ukraine, it's a necessity, meaning without such a technology, the drone is useless. And this is why we put more and more focus over the past few years on enabling critical missions in the areas of HLS, defense, security missions, and logistics, where you're really relying on this type of technologies. It's a must.
Can you talk a little bit more about where does it meet the operator? You mentioned Ukraine, 2021, 2022. Everybody realizes that drones are the main thing, and that's how Ukraine is resisting the war. Not to talk about the amount of drones that they're producing nowadays. What was the process to integrate it in Ukraine or wherever else you're having your products functioning today?
Right. So the Sightec approach, unlike, by the way, other technologies in the market, the approach is software first. At the end, we are a group of algorithm developers, software developers that deal with hardware as well and robotics. But at the heart, at the core of what we do is software. So we develop our autonomy stack. We have been doing that for the past 8.5 years. And now the question was how to connect it, how to integrate that as a plug and play system. And I would say that it was a journey to be adaptive to different type of drone systems. And we talked about Ukraine. Let's take the Israeli example.
Yes.
So the conflict in Israel started more than 2 years ago. And I would say that at the beginning of this conflict, you had autonomy technology out there in the market, but it was kept for, I would say, high-end missions. So if you're talking about very expensive UAVs, they do have the redundant systems, but then the question was how to equip thousands of drones with this type of system. And then the challenge was, in a way, how to squeeze an elephant in a matchbox, how to take fancy technology and enable that on off-the-shelf drones, make it very simple to use, make it plug and play, and also affordable enough so you can install that on a fleet of drones. And this is what we have been dealing with over the past few years. And today, we are fully operational on more than 3,000 drones and UAVs. We are getting close to 4,000, and different type of platforms, from off-the-shelf drones all the way to fixed wing that flying in higher altitudes. This was the journey, how to really scale up with this type of technology and use cases.
In relation to that, so if I understand right, your software is integrated into the camera that the company that developed the drone have created. You integrate your software inside, and then are you using that data to learn better and get some computer vision if we look into the future?
I'll try to simplify. To enable visual perception or visual autonomy, you need the camera and the processor. You need the compute power, and you need the camera itself. We are working with daylight sensors like RGB cameras, and we are dealing also with thermal cameras to enable night operations. And let's focus on one application. This is the main product that we have been selling over the past few years. It's a product called NavSight. It's visual navigation product, enables you to fly day and night in a GPS denied environment. And for that, again, you need the camera and the processor. Since we are focusing on the software and we want to be able to integrate to different platforms, we developed a very flexible and modular approach that allows you to play with those components so it can really support what you need. So for small tactical drones where you cannot add additional payload, we would put the technology sometimes on the ground, relying on the communication channel with the drone, and then it's hardware free in the air. For bigger vehicles like fixed wing that is flying in higher altitude, where you do have the weight, the power, also they can bear those type of costs, we would put a full payload that includes this camera and a processor on the vehicle itself, so it can work independently as a visual sensor. So this level of modularity is the winning approach, I believe, because it allows you to serve big fleets in different type of configurations.
I heard some people talk about vision processing as the new source of GPS. I don't know if you remember, but we had like a year and a half in Israel that there was no GPS.
Exactly.
Probably the founder of Waze went crazy that people are not using his app. But I think on a social level, it was great that people are started questioning each other how to get from one point to another. But if we talk about aerial vehicles, how do you see it replacing GPS? Are we over with GPS? The era of GPS is done, and we are now getting into visual or LiDAR and different sensors as navigation systems, or it's going to live nearby?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I don't think that GPS is going to go anywhere. GPS is a very robust system. It took years to develop this infrastructure, which is great. However, the world became addicted to GPS. So all IoT devices, everything is relying on GPS for location. And I think that the dangerous part in what we're saying now is that there is a sole source for failure, which you cannot allow yourself. So the world slowly realizing that this is a huge threat, because at the end GPS is very fragile. It's easy to block, you know that as a drone pilot, and it's not. By the way, it's not just jamming that interfere in those signals. We're talking about jamming, spoofing, and sometimes in certain areas, like within urban canyons, in dense urban environments, you suffer from loss of GPS. Sometimes in the mountains, and you cannot be in a situation in which a vehicle that flies in the air, whether it will be small or bigger than that, will rely just on GPS, and when it goes off, then you have the risk of losing the mission and losing the vehicle itself. So this is, of course, a critical issue to solve, and we see vision sensors as a complementary technology. Okay, this is something that you want to have in place, that once GPS fails, you have another source to rely on. And it goes back to the kind of to the human brain, right? Before we had satellites, we as people, we are using our own eyes in order to walk in the streets. So today we are using more and more Google Maps and the Waze applications and things like that. But at the end, when this goes off, you can open your eyes and get the orientation. We see the same thing that should happen when it comes to robots and drones. They should have also the ability
Yeah,
to
maybe
get the orientation once GPS is
kids
is
today would buy from you a product that is a hat with the camera looking forward, and they
Right.
can look down to their phone and just walk, and it tells them, watch out, there's a post
I
or,
can see
or
that.
someone in
I can
front
see
of
that
you. You're talking now, and I just came back from the States, about flying cars, delivery drones that you mentioned before. Do you see those companies looking into the visual navigation operations? Are they expecting the visual element to be that second safety option after the GPS doesn't operate? What can you tell us about that
Right.
area?
There's a big area of alternative navigation technologies that includes several sensors that one needs to consider. And as long as you go to high-end operations that require very high safety standards, I would recommend a multiple approach. A flying vehicle, flying taxi, will need to have multiple redundant systems. It will need to take the best of all worlds. So for example, a vehicle like that will need, besides redundant GPS systems, they will need to have a good inertial systems, INS, that will be combined with visual system. For example, INS systems are very robust, but they get drifted. So visual systems can fix those and provide you with a robust and accurate system that will ensure the right safety level for those type of missions and vehicles. And if the world want to really be able to deploy those type of vehicles in an urban environment, even in a rural environment, you have to take care of those redundant and fail-safe systems to make sure that once GPS is off, you still can navigate accurately and safely.
So what would be the threat, or what is the danger? Like, how can we are the blue side, how would the bad side
Right.
manipulate the ground or the urban space that will affect the type of technology that you're using? Is there anything that could make I don't know, the camera is looking downwards, and then they could put some blurry smoke or whatever at the bottom, so the camera gets confused and the software
Right.
is not really able to do the operation?
Let's first maybe describe the problem itself. So today, in more and more areas in the world, when conflicts start in different regions, for example, recently you saw the conflict in Thailand. So you can see today, you can watch it in maps that are constantly updating, and you can get the GPS interferences globally. You can see it today in the web. So I tend to check it almost every day, and you can see that in different regions worldwide, GPS goes blind in certain regions. And then with a technology like that, when GPS is not available, you're moving to the camera itself, and whether it's a thermal camera or an RGB, you can match yourself to a reference map and know where you are. And this gives you autonomous navigation capabilities. So you're relying on your own camera. What goes on from both sides? One side will try to take off GPS, and the other side will need to show how it can overcome those type of interferences with an autonomous with some autonomous capabilities. Now your question is how you can disrupt that. So I imagine that over in the future we will see other technologies trying to interfere in those processes as well. How to say how it will evolve, but I imagine that it will be a continuous a race, like you see in cybersecurity or other places in which you have the cat and mouse kind of race to challenge the other side constantly. But I don't want to give different ideas to those type of technologies, so I'll keep it to myself.
I get it. Okay. People I feel sometimes are getting wrong the speed and the progress of autonomous vehicles. used two different types of autonomous cars back in the States. Here it looks like it's something that will take forever, even though the technologies are developed in here. Can you say something about what people are getting
Sure.
wrong about the involvement of unmanned vehicles?
Sure. So I see autonomy as a journey. And you gave us the autonomous car example, which is great. Autonomous vehicles, autonomous cars, they promised us to have those type of technologies already, but it's a journey, and you need to evolve into that journey. It takes time. It takes time to get to the right safety level. It takes time to make it economic enough so we can put those type of technologies at scale. And I think that people, what they get wrong sometimes is that people tend to look at maybe autonomy level 5. They want the concept to be fully autonomous, and this is not necessarily what the market wants here and now, or is willing to pay for. In order to create something that will be not only robust but will be effective in the field, you need to match between the autonomy level and the cost of the system, the weight of the system, the way you use it. So like with autonomous cars, we tend to look at assisted systems as the first step. You want to take the drone pilot that today needs to deal with a high level of complexity. Think about a drone pilot, for example, in a battlefield. So everyone is shooting, right? And you have a very stressful environment. Many times you operate at night. It's complete darkness. You need to turn off the lights of the drone itself. And now you're also under electronic warfare, which means that you're losing your location. And you need at the end to conduct, let's say, a reconnaissance mission. And the drone pilot needs to do all of that simultaneously. So they need to take care of the flight itself, not losing the drone, but at the same time, they need to take care of the mission. So for this type of pilots, they don't need autonomous level 5. They don't need the full mission to be completely autonomous, but they do need technologies that will enable them to be hands-free as much as they can, that will enable them to focus on the mission itself and not be concerned of losing the drone or aborting the mission. This is what the market needs here and now. At the same time, today we are engaged in a project in which you want to see fully autonomous operations of VTOLs that can fly from one box, conduct the mission, and come back. These type of vehicles need higher level of autonomy that will include navigation, landing, obstacle avoidance, and others. So in a way, you need to be able to be flexible enough and to bring the right technology, right configuration to each one of those deployments. I hope it makes sense.
Yeah, I think you mentioned landing as if it's just a part of the process, but
it's a painful
when
part.
training, that would be 92% of what I would look into, and that's where my focus would be. When someone is operating, takeoff and landing would be the main reason of any accident and crash in drones and
Makes sense.
in commercial airplanes. And that's your technology is changing that type of risk that exists in manned and in unmanned vehicles. And I feel that, as you said, it's right that assisted operator gets more capabilities. It creates some new space in our brain in order to be able to operate the mission better. It's at some point making me feel, as you said, the drones that are going to get out of a box and need to take an operation freely. The only thing that will be stopping that advancement would be the price of the systems or the size, as you said, of what is carried on. And I feel that angle, to take it from a software side, it's very unique and interesting. And I wanted to ask you a little bit on the entrepreneurial side, if you would meet someone that is now finished his operation in reserves or from Ukraine or wherever there is a conflict, these days, and he wants to get into entrepreneurship around unmanned vehicles. What would you start in 2026?
Right. Which niche?
Right.
What I would look for?
Yes.
Okay, so in terms of niches in the market, I think that there are lots of unsolved problems that relate to the flight itself, as we are dealing with. I mentioned few categories, including navigation, landing, obstacle avoidance, and other things that you need to take care of. And I would recommend to deal with practical issues, not to try and solve the entire issue, because the entire issue is huge. And you can solve it to all vehicles, and to look for the best system out there. As a small startup company, this is not something that I would recommend. I would do recommend to focus on certain practical pain points. As you mentioned, there are some really big pain points for the pilots, and bring those practical solutions that can enhance the mission in a scalable fashion, meaning you have to meet the cost, weight, the way that you install your solution. You need to take care of things like supply chain. For example, people don't tend to think about that because sometimes engineers are focused on enabling fancy technology and that's it. But for us in those conflict regions, whether it's in Ukraine or in Israel, you live the challenge of how to bring practical solutions to the field and how to do that at scale. Because at the end, when the problems actually start, because you can prepare yourself for years, but then when the conflict starts, supply chain is not there, constant issues of how to install it, how fast you can deploy, can you support my small drone with your technology? And sometimes the answers are, it looks like, if I'm taking that analogy from kind of a different area, I'm telling my team sometimes it's like bringing those technologies is like picking your daughter from the kindergarten with a semi-trailer. You're coming with a fancy technology that just doesn't fit in. So if you are building something in autonomy, think about practical solutions that people, your customers, can deploy here and now.
My follow-up question to this is, kids that finish now the military service or finish high school in the States, what would you recommend? Going to the academia or to start developing your thing? We can see a lot of examples of 19-year-old entrepreneurs in the States now that they realize with everything that is going on in defense tech, maybe it's not the right thing to go to MIT and 4 years study what are the problems out there and come up with something, but you already start doing something.
Right. Okay. It's a complicated question because as you ask, I'm asking myself what I would recommend to my kids.
Right.
So I would say that I wouldn't speak against the academia because it's an important experience. But for entrepreneurs that have the passion, the experience, the ability, and they think that they have something huge to offer to the market, this is the time. So I would jump in. I know some people, even people that work for Sightec, that did it in parallel, meaning they're studying in academia and at the same time they're working for us part-time because they're excited about the technology and they want to deal with practical things. So there are some ways to combine. I know it's complicated, so I wouldn't say that this is doable for all type of students, but if
You need a very
if you're
specific profile.
enthusiastic about that, there are ways to combine between the two.
Right. And how does the next 5-10 years look like then? If we realize that your technology is going to advance, the capabilities would be smaller on bigger vehicles, and then looking into swarms and other types of categories that the world is talking about that will be part of the next wars or drone shows that are taking
Right.
place in China and already spreading to other countries. How do you see the future?
Yeah. So I think it would be obvious to say that drones are going to keep keep growing in an exponential way. We can see it in conflicts. We can see it also in the commercial market. Drone is a very effective way to get the information that you need to conduct missions. You don't need to rely on expensive air force, and you could use drones in a very effective way, especially when it comes to critical missions. What we are going to see, we already see that, but we are going to see it more and more, is those type of operations becoming a commodity, I would say. So if a few years ago it was kept for special forces or people with a fancy technology in hand, today it's becoming more and more trivial, which means that in defense, every unit have one type of drone or more. And if it touches other critical missions like police missions, you see police using drones very extensively. And I think that once the regulatory framework will allow that, you're going to see, of course, more and more drones in security missions and logistic missions and inspection missions and more. And it's going to get bigger and bigger. What I expect to see, even before we are moving to swarm of drones that cooperate with each other, I expect to see the overall mission becoming seamless, becoming so elegant that with the click of a button you can get what you want to get. You're looking for actionable insights from the mission. You want to take a parcel and move it from point A to point B. Today, the entire operation is pretty complicated, logistic-wise and also technology-wise. You need the right proficiency level, maybe like yours. And what I expect to see people with very poor training be able to conduct the same mission, same level of efficiency. Once you get to that point, the entire operation becomes more economic, which is critical, and it becomes also safer enough. So the regulator will be a regulator, or if it's in bigger organizations, will feel very comfortable in conducting more and more missions that way.
Roy, that's super exciting, and I believe, as you're saying, it's small steps and
assisted systems on the
assisted
journey to full
systems
autonomy
are taking us to that point, and we need to make sure the safety is leading in that progress, because as we know from history, in whatever point that on the safety progress an accident happens, someone dies
Right.
because of those vehicles, it could stop a whole industry from advancing,
Right.
and change the game completely for entrepreneurs like you, governments, organizations that rely themselves on different type of unmanned technologies. But I feel that we are in an exciting era, and it's going to continue. To see a robot just rolling in the streets of Miami, and that people already understand what's the value that they're getting from that
Right.
robot doing the deliveries, is an advancement. If I look 2 years back, that you will run here on the beach in Tel Aviv and you would see scooters in the water.
Right.
That people didn't accept those type of technologies and vehicles taking part of our private space or the areas that we are enjoying from. And I feel that education is a part of that progress. That's also the reason that we are doing that podcast and bring up those
Right.
topics. And I want to finish with a question, getting back to the academia, because that's where you started the episode and actually the venture. How do you see academia evolving in that space? Computer vision, of course, is taking place in cars. We have the examples of Mobileye. How do you see the academia leading after the conflict that we had here in Israel since October 7, actually being the push that we need, Technion and others bringing the next types of technologies that would evolve the unmanned vehicle space?
Yeah, so I think that in the area of robotics, drones and robotics, academia is a very important partner, and academia can suggest different innovative concepts of how to not only solve some real technological challenges, but also again how to do it in with minimum hardware in a very cost-effective way that can enable us to take those type of technologies and put them everywhere. I'll give one example of the type of challenges that Sightec has been dealing with over the years.
Please.
Sightec, the academic research came from the area of real-time registration, which is the challenge of how to match between two photos in real time in a very efficient very efficient way, computation-wise. So you need to use minimum compute power and still be able to process those images and match between the two of them in real time. Now, you want to do it, when we started, we did it with RGB cameras. And then the challenge was how to fit between a thermal camera and a daylight map, and to do that in real time. The map can be outdated, and it can be 3 years old, and the drone is flying now, and you need to match between the two in a very accurate way. And over time, when we saw drone pilots working with the camera, they moved the camera to different directions, and then you had to match between different angles and still be able to find yourself. So these are type of issues that research is crucial, and we have been using lots of academic research, and this is how we started as a company and still does, taking those innovative concepts of how to constantly evolve the technology to bring it to a level in which, again, the entire mission is seamless, and you could do that without adding lots of constraints on the drone pilot in order to be able to work with your technology. So academia can play a great role in bringing more and more solutions to those type of challenges.
Thank you. I will definitely find our next person to sit in your chair as someone from the academia to tell us
That would be awesome.
on what challenges they're working on right now. So thank you, Roy, for
Thanks a lot
your
for
time
having
and
me.
being here. It was a great episode, and wish a lot of success to Sightec in Israel and abroad.
Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure. Good luck also with this great podcast.